English spelling sucks and is bad and was made by the devil and it will bang your mom, yada yada yada. We've heard it all before. But what makes it suck? Like, really suck? Because I don't think bringing back thorn or eth or win is more than an aesthetic change. No, one of the only few things that I think really makes English spelling suck is its vowels. But let's exercise our noggins for a bit. If English vowels suck, then what if no vowels? I mean, the Arabs do it, and it works fine for them. In fact, how about we take the way they write and adapt it into English? It's been done before by at least 2 other people. I tried to find more, but all I get are calligraphy lessons. But I have some gripes with their systems, mainly the fact that they could lean more into the vowelless writing that Arabic allows. I should state now that this is not at all a jab against these people or their systems. I'm just having fun with language and writing. With that said, the first thing that needs to be defined is what sounds are we even going to write down. Now, the answer is not too complicated for the consonants. English has 24 in most dialects. Add 1 if you pronounce this as loch or this as whine, and remove 2 if you say north or tin. For the sake of fitting more dialects, I'll consider h here for a total of 25 consonants. M, n, ng, p, b, t, d, k, g, f, v, th, th, s, z, sh, j, ch, j, la, r, ya, h, w, and h. We will talk about hua later. The vowels are a bit of a mess. I'll consider English as having 7 monophthongs: trap, palm, thought, kit, dress, foot, and comma, 7 diphthongs: fleece, face, price, choice, goose, goat, and mouth, and 6 pre-R vowels: start, near, square, north, nurse, and cure. The phonemes usually transcribed as the monophthongs long E and long U, fleece and goose, are much better thought of as closing diphthongs, and I've decided to merge strut with schwa for 2 reasons. Firstly, trying to fit 7 monophthongs is hard enough, as you'll see later. I don't want to add an 8th. And secondly, most dialects merge these phones anyways. They're only distinct in Southeastern England, Australia, and Ireland. With that, we can get to the actual adapting of English to the Arabic script. Consonants are simple enough. We can use mim for ma, nun for na, ba for ba, ta for ta, dal for da, kaf for ka, fa for fa, tha for tha, thal for the, sin for sa, zay for sa, shin for sha, jim for ja, lam for la, ra for ra, ya for ya, ha for ha, wow for wa, and he for h. We will use kaf for ga, which I will now call gaf because I'm not good at Q sounds. This letter usually represents k, but it's common to pronounce this as g in southern Egypt, Sudan, Libya, Mauritania, and most of the Arabian Peninsula, so this is fine by me. The sounds ng, p, v, j, and ch do not exist in Arabic and therefore have no corresponding letters. However, since the Arabic script has been adapted to many other languages, new letters have been introduced to represent these sounds. I have chosen to use jawinga for ng, p for p, v for v, j for j, and che for ch. These last 4 were originally added for Farsi, though v has become obsolete in that language, being kept alive in other languages like Comorian, Kurdish, Swahili, and Wahi when written in the Arabic script. Remember how I said we would talk about hua later? Yeah, now is later. Hua is a bit of a stinker because I can't find a great way of representing it. The best I could find is wa with 3 dots on top, which represents w in Uyghur, Kazakh, and Kyrgyz. The x sound is also a problem. We usually represent this with a single letter, an x, but there is no equivalent letter in Arabic. Whenever the sound comes up, which is usually just in loanwords, it's written with kaf and sin. We could just copy that, but words like tax with an x and tax with cks exist, and I'd like to keep the distinction between the two. The best I've been able to come up with is to write this blend with gaf and zay in words like tax with an x or axis, and kaf and sin or gaf with sin in words like tax or bags, or whenever this blend comes as a result of inflection. It's not perfect. There's probably some word that I don't know of whose spelling has been worsened because of this, but if Arabic can exist without the letter X, so can English. Vowels are, of course, trickier, and to understand why, it'd be best if I shortly explain how Arabic works. Arabic has 6 vowel phonemes, e, u, and a, in both short and long forms. Some Arabic varieties also have long e and long o, but they're written the same as long e and long u, so they don't really matter for our purposes. The long vowels share their letter with a consonant, so long e and ya share ya, long u and w share wow, and long a and the glottal stop share aleph. Meanwhile, the short vowels can be written with diacritics placed above consonant letters called harakat, but they're only really used in kids' books and language learning material. Because my intention is to not write vowels unless absolutely necessary, I don't want to give letters like ya or wow a vowel value, which only leaves us with 3 vowel diacritics when we need to fit 7 vowels. We can use the a mark called fatha for schwa, the e mark called kasra for kit, and the u mark called dama for foot, but we kinda get stuck here. Luckily, other languages come to the rescue once again. Wolof in particular has a vowel inventory that's comparable to that of English, and it just so happens that Wolof used to be written with the Arabic script before it adopted its current one. Arabic Wolof uses arrowheads and modified fathahs for its vowels, and we can specifically use a dotted fathah for trap, a left pointing under arrow for dress, a left pointing over arrow for palm, and a right pointing over arrow for thought. There's room for variation in how these symbols can be assigned, and there's a handful of diacritics from other languages that you could use as well, but I'm content enough with this system. Now, if vowel diacritics go on top of a consonant and mark which vowel comes after it, you might be wondering how are we supposed to represent words that start with vowels, which don't have any consonants before them, of course. We could leave them as is, keyword being could, but I don't think it's a good idea. Instead, we will use the letter aleph for this, putting it at the beginning of a word if it starts with a vowel. It doesn't tell the reader which vowel it is, so we're still keeping vowels completely optional in writing. You can specify which vowel it is with the diacritics from before. Another problem we have right now is that consonants are ambiguous in whether they are actually followed by a vowel or not, so words like bring and boring look identical. To remedy this, we have another diacritic called a sukun, which tells the reader that the consonant it's marking doesn't have a vowel after it. Because words that end in consonants are very common in English, we will actually assume that all consonants at the end of a word don't have a following vowel. That's to say, they have an inherent sukun. But now how do we mark that a word does actually end in a vowel? Well, we can do the same that we do for the beginning of words. Put an aleph on it. And if you need to specify which vowel it is, you can put its appropriate diacritic on the aleph. The diphthongs and pre-R vowels are actually pretty easy now that we have this set up. Place the appropriate vowel diacritic, followed by ya if it's a diphthong that ends with ya, wow if it's a diphthong that ends in w, or ra for pre-R vowels. You can use a sukun for clarification if necessary, like when differentiating words like quite from quiet. Lastly, there's another diacritic I want to talk about, which is called shada. In regular Arabic, this marks long consonants called gemination, but I've decided to use it to mark stress instead. Stress is not particularly important for most words, so you can skip writing it, but it can be used to differentiate words like insight from insight. I considered this other diacritic using Rohingya to mark a rising tone, but I figure shada might have more font support. Lastly, all of these diacritics are only really necessary for disambiguating words, just like in Arabic, so it's not needed to add them when the word you're referring to is obvious, just like in Arabic, either because there's only one possible reading or because every other reading is unreasonable because of its context. And with that, we have a pretty cool Arabization of English. Here's the text of The North Wind and the Sun, one of Aesop's fables, which is common in phonetic transcriptions. And that's pretty much it. Except there's more video left. Why? Because there's a small change we can make that I think might be beneficial. Arabic has 3 parts: the base or skeletal form of a letter called rasm, diacritics called tashkil, and these dots called ijam. These dots help differentiate letters that have the same rasm, like ghain, gain, or nga. I probably pronounced those wrong, I'm not going to re-record this. You might see what I'm going for. If we don't have ghain or gain as letters, what do we need these dots for? They're not disambiguating anything. How about we just get rid of them? This seems completely unreasonable. They're pretty much compulsory and are part of the letter itself. Even in non-vocalized writing in Arabic, they're not removed. However, in the past, though we are talking 11th century past, these actually used to be optional. Now, we don't need to be drastic about this. As a matter of fact, there's only 2 letters that I believe it's reasonable to apply this change on. Nga, which would now look like Hain, and the final and isolated forms of Ya, which would now look like Alif Maksura, not to be confused with regular Alif. This last change is already pretty common in Egypt and Sudan and completely standard in the Farsi language. Not to say that we simply don't use Alif Maksura, so I have no problems applying this change. I can't justify Nga in the same way, but again, we simply don't need the dots because we don't use Hain or Gain. We could theoretically also do this with Che, so it looks like Ha, or even Nun, which already has a name, Nun Guna, and it is used in many languages to mark nasalization, but I've decided against it. Lastly, I've decided to change Kaf to Keheh using Sini and Farsi to remove its diacritic too. We can call this new adaptation Form 2 or something, I don't know, and so the previous one is Form 1. Here's the North Wind and the Sun again with the new changes highlighted. There's some more ideas that I tried, like assigning Shut to Sad and Jut to Dad, which isn't as unreasonable as it sounds when it's theorized that Dad was originally pronounced like this. I'm not going to attempt that, which isn't terribly different from Ja, or assigning Ksa to Ta for the sake of giving it a dedicated letter, which is as unreasonable as it sounds like. At the end though, I decided that this is probably a good place to stop before I go too crazy and ruin everything. Again, as I said in the beginning, this isn't a jab towards the Ingresi or Lizardian adaptations of English to Arabic or any of the people that made it or any other adaptations for that matter. It's just me putting my hat in the ring because I find this fun, so please don't take this too seriously. And with that, have a good one, folks.